Hi everyone, my name is Ferral Predicts. I'm a game developer, and today I want to react to a video of Bellular News. Riot Empire is falling apart. This is a very interesting video, and I think it's worth discussing it. So give a like and subscribe to him, watch the video on his channel too, and let's begin.
You know, with the High Guard situation, it kind of made sense. It's a new company that doesn't have all the money in the universe. But this one's about Riot, and they do have a lot of money, though they're struggling to put the S in Riot Games because their most recent game launched a month ago. Yes, a new game from Riot.
To be fair, I have followed 2XKO development, and I was following some of the people in the fighting game community space that were testing it and discussing it and everything else. And despite all of this, I was completely unaware that the game was released. That means there was basically zero effort in advertisement and in proposing the game to the audience.
Riot. Loads of people have no idea, though. I kind of had no idea. Now, the development team has just been cut in half, and it's just the latest in a string of money-driven decisions.
I wonder what was the size of the team actually. I never checked into it, but I imagine it was not a big team, right?
Because maybe Riot's infinite money tap is running dry. You see, a decade ago, League of Legends was unstoppable, so Riot expanded. New genres, new games. They bought indie teams outright and spent millions trying to build a grand empire. And then, post-pandemic, something seems to have changed. We've seen them circle the wagons around League's monetization. You know, $300, $400 skins. Ouch. There's experiments like Riot Forge, which seemed promising, but were killed. There's Hytale being cut loose. And now Riot are so afraid of losing out that they won't even try to give a game a chance if it doesn't succeed off the bat.
And Bellular is right. If you look at the stock value, as you can see, there was a peak in 2018 and there was a peak in 2021. League of Legends is still a very successful live service. Valorant is also a very successful live service. That means they generate a lot of revenue every year. But despite all, they had a very, very big growth into the COVID era, but they also had a crash after the COVID era. And most likely, this game was on the chopping board for a very long time, and they simply waited to release it to see if it was succeeding or not. No one knew about this game. That means they didn't want anyone to know about this game. They just wanted to cut it off. Just an excuse.
And to me, it's an insane story, because maybe this game could have got word of mouth over time, or any of those things that could have got people into it. I don't know about you, but most of the people I know, even ones who do care about fighting games, had kind of no idea, didn't really notice that it launched. This is weird, so let's get into it. The game is called 2XKO. Not exactly the most SEO-friendly title, not exactly the most memorable one. Maybe that didn't help them, but their staff had worked on this game for nearly a decade, and some were laid off with about 30 minutes notice. On February 9th, 20 days after launch, Riot announced that 50% of the dev team, around 80 people, would be laid off.
80 people? So the team of 2XKO was 160 people? Why? I mean, I am surprised that this game was not killed before now.
Something went deeply wrong with the launch of Riot's very own fighting game. And the thing is, we know this is because of the weak console release. And that has happened just 3 months after PC Early Access. And we know because Riot said it themselves. Here's the quote. As we expanded from PC to console, we saw consistent trends in how players were engaging with 2XKO. The game has resonated with a passionate core audience, but overall momentum hasn't reached the level needed to support a team of this size long term.
I follow with the development of 2XKO, and the understanding that I got is that for some reason they decided to have a lot of pro players in fighting games in the development team. That is not a good idea if you want to create a fighting game for a bigger audience. I mean, if you want to make a competitive game that is really interesting and want to fight against Street Fighter into the Evo, sure, you can do it. But if you want to make a casual game, having these people having a word inside it, I don't think it's the smartest idea. We are talking about $100+ million into development of a fighting game that is mostly for a core audience without advertisement, and you were expecting it to catch the casual player audience? How?
Oh, it's funny, for a company who really does seem to be okay with investing lots of money into big projects that will take a long time, say the MMO, it seems they weren't willing to invest the time, needed for this game to be live and perhaps grow and improve based on player feedback. Because, I'm going to be real with you, something like this happening, I think, is counter to the goal of this game eventually turning right. So what's happened is the team is being downsized. Laid off staff will get a chance to apply for jobs elsewhere within Riot, and anyone who can't will get 6 months of severance.
I mean, 6 months of severance is a very good deal. I mean, most of the American companies will give you how much? 15 days? Giving them 6 months severance is recognizing that this is a mass layoff and give them a chance. And of course, you can try to apply for different positions. Most of the technical people could find a position in Riot, but that may also mean that you have to relocate somewhere else. So I don't know. Let's say they got a 6 months severance package. That is not too bad.
Well, judging by those who have already announced they were laid off, there are fighting game specific staff who simply won't be able to jump ship to somewhere else within Riot. They're just not making other games like it. And as for the game itself, it ain't dead. Riot still have plans to support development and have community-led competitive play, you know, just in a way that reflects how much money they think they can make from it.
To be fair, 80 people for a game like this is enough. What is the number of the people that do Guilty Gear? Arc System Works is the company that makes Guilty Gear Strive, Dragon Ball FighterZ, now is making Marvel Tokon. They have around 200 employees, and they have multiple projects at the same time going, and they have still people working most likely on other projects. Like they have to keep the various fighting games they have alive and running, and they make DLC and everything else. So I would say most likely they use 100 people to develop Marvel Tokon, and they take 4 years. But let's see, whatever.
I mean, they're still teasing and showing off new characters, so the game isn't dead. But here's the thing with this game. 2KXO was always going to struggle. It's a free-to-play niche subgenre of fighting game that I think would always be tough to make money from, especially when the competitors are paid products. You see, even with heavily monetized cosmetics and battle passes, 2XKO never really had the roster to support massive spending. Now, their new smaller dev team does mean lower costs, sure, but this pragmatism feels absurd the second you zoom out and look at the overall picture. Because this game was in development for 10 years, and Riot somehow didn't have a problem with it until now. So what's happened? What's changed? There's one thing you need to know, and it kind of kicks off the whole trajectory of this. In 2016, it was a bit of a different Riot Games. Now, they purchased Radiant Entertainment. This was part of the same surge of acquisitions and investment that led them towards Hytale, Riot Forge, and even to Valorant. You know, obviously that one worked out. And it wasn't some random indie pickup either. No, Tom and Tony Cannon are the people who launched EVO, and they worked on the creation of the rollback netcode. The big thing that everyone talks about in the FGC. The thing that, you know, devs would be hounded to add because without it, it just feels completely antiquated. So these aren't guys who just participate.
To clarify, this was the innovation in the fighting games, because the previous kind of netcode was creating lags and problems, and the rollback netcode basically allow you to play way better even with higher latency in this kind of games that are very sensitive to lag, way more than any other game.
Participated in the fighting game community. They quite literally built the infrastructure that a lot of the FGC runs on. Now, their studio had been building Rising Thunder. It was a free-to-play fighter that they were making with Seth Killian, another FGC legend, also being on board, so there was real pedigree and talent. Now, the game was cancelled after the Riot acquisition, though it was released to the community with open source servers. Pretty sweet, but obviously it's not that game that Riot acquired them for. They acquired them basically because of their experience. So instead, the Cannons and their team shifted to Project L. Project L is the game that would become 2XKO. And if anyone could make a fighting game work at Riot, it was surely this team and these people. Now, in 2019, they confirmed a new fighting game was in the works, with some early hints that it would feature League of Legends characters. Tests in 2023 and 24 revealed the name of the game, 2XKO. Of course, named because you would need 2 knockouts to win. That's kinda cute. But, well, if you're a League of Legends player, you maybe won't know what that is, naturally. If you're any other human, you may recognize KO and think knockout, so sure, a fighting game, but it doesn't feel like a brand. It feels like a cute descriptor.
I agree with him about it, and especially for me, 2XKO feels like 2K something, like 2K basket, 2K something else, 2K KO. So it feels like something that is not even coming from Riot. And maybe 2XKO would have been a good 2XKO double dots Legend of Arcane, so Legends of the Rift, Fighters of the Rift, something that gives you a bit of an extra grip on what it is. But the same can be said about Valorant. I mean, the name Valorant doesn't tell you anything about League of Legends, and the same is for Arcane. They are not trying to create a family feeling and interconnect the things very strictly, according to what I've seen. The Arcane series has a completely different name, and many people don't even know is from the video game League of Legends.
Honestly, it's my opinion that that name and such a misfire with branding just completely killed the chances that this would have. I think this was a negative multiplier on everything that they did. Look at other game
I'm not 100% sure about it. I think that the lack of marketing is the issue here.
names. Killer Instinct, Street Fighter. They just make more emotional sense than the silly name that this game has. Especially because, while they had lead characters, there was a massive lack of
Metzen, one of the creators of World of Warcraft, was complaining recently after getting back to Blizzard that the name is Warcraft and this may scare new people. So yeah, probably it was intentional. They didn't have anything like that because some marketer person came up with the idea that if we use a fighting title, a fighting name, we may scare off some of the public. So we want to have a neutral title or name that doesn't imply killing and fighting. Yeah, that's why most likely the name is this.
branding, and the cross-promotion stuff wasn't really that successful. And unlike Hytale, which launched a week earlier, 2XKO just couldn't break through the January doldrums to reach big new audiences. But it might actually be Hytale that exposes 2XKO's biggest problem. Because just like that game, Riot clearly decided that they needed to make money, and the 10 years of development suddenly needed to deliver.
The line must go up. You cannot have the same revenue of the last year, let alone have less. It doesn't matter the justification. The amount of annoyance that there was after COVID in all the companies that were trying in all the way possible to stay at the same level of revenue, that was ridiculous because everyone knew that the reason why you got more revenue was an environmental situation. It was a buff, a word buff that you got. Of course, you will not be able to do it afterwards, but no, it doesn't matter. They expect that they have to perform exactly in the same way as with the buff, without the buff. I think that this is what happened there. They just realized that they cannot make money anymore with the games they already have. They cannot increase revenue there. They are not able to do that. So they pivot to reducing the cost. I mean, in the case of 2XKO, 160 employees for 10 years, it's a big number. 80 people can keep up the game in the next years, most likely. Maybe you will just slow down a bit the changes in the game, but that's it. I understand the cut. Hytale is a different story. Hytale is one of these annoying corporate things where if we don't make this amount of billions with the game, it's not worth to make it, even if you make a profit.
Emphasis on the suddenly. And now for the context that makes this all click. So whenever Hytale was cancelled, it was because Riot could no longer invest the funds necessary to ship the game as intended being the big operative there. Because even though Hytale has launched and has been a big success, it's not the type of success that Riot would have wanted. To Riot, Hytale had to be a Riot-quality AAA game across all of the different platforms. That's why, as an example, they did the big engine rewrite, which humongously damaged the development process of that game, and of course, that's all work that has been scrapped for the Hytale that we now have. And what that insane scope...
I'm not sure if that work was scrapped. Most likely this game runs on that engine now. They probably just begin from scratch to recreate a new engine so that they could publish the game for consoles. I don't know if the game that was bought by the founder of Hytale is the game that was in 2016 or the new game they were working on, but what Riot wanted was a new Minecraft. They were aiming for a new Minecraft, nothing less.
Meant is that Hytale was just a game that would happily be taking Riot money to build this big Riot quality AAA thing forever until something changed at Riot, and they suddenly needed something that needed to be shipped or sold, and relatively quickly. With Hytale, that was simply not possible because of where it was. 2XKO was almost certainly in a similar place, just that it was eminently more shippable as compared to Hytale. And what's rough is that that development team, along with others, like some of the Hytale people, they were victims of Riot's hubristic belief that things would never change. Because for nearly 10 years, Riot was comfortable just letting developers simply build, simply develop. Now, they'd been fully acquired by Tencent in 2015. They had League of Legends money. Over the next 5 years, they would have Runeterra money, Valorant money, lots of money. And this meant not a lot of near-term financial.
No, I don't agree with you. They still have these monies. I know that it may not look like that, but they still have these monies. It's not that they don't have them. The difference is just in the stock value. Most likely, they are making more money now than they were making in the past. Like 2015, they were making way smaller amount of money. Now they are probably making so much money that doesn't make any sense. They are money printer, and that's why a lot of companies are looking for these games and say, we want to have that. So I think it's mostly a change in management style, and most likely there were some changes in the higher up people in these companies in this time that we don't know about.
Financial pressure. They had more cash than they needed. So what they needed to do with that cash was reinvest it. That's a noble goal. But when you get blasé about money, well, reality can hit you damn fast. Let's take a look at the projects. Riot Forge was never going to make games as successful as League, but to Riot at the time it was about expanding their world, empire building. Arcane was costly, but for many people, it's the best thing that Riot's ever been involved with, quality-wise. And they brought up indie teams like Hypixel and Radiant to make sure those studios could deliver on the promise of their pitched games. You know, not a game that would come out sort of early access, not really finished, maybe a bit of a high guard situation. No, that they would benefit from the Riot money to fully deliver the promise of their games. Riot could give time, funding, and resources, things that are not abundant in the games industry. And they're things that are important, that do work. Do you know what game we praised last year for that exact process? It was this tiny little game, I think about bugs, called Silksong. There's a future then.
We have to discuss this part here. Tencent is creating various products for game development AI-based. I just tried recently a 3D model generator developed by Tencent. It's called Uyu 1 3D or something like that. It's an incredible system that can make a lot of cool stuff. Really, we are getting to the point where unfortunately 3D artists may not be that needed anymore, because with a good 2D sketch, you can already reach a level where you can get a full 3D model and you can rig it. And they want to focus most of these resources into AI. So what I expect it happened is that they most likely moved some of these resources into the new AI development. So they are investing the money they would invest into these games into AI.
Where maybe Riot didn't shit out 2XKO, where it actually got time and its release would have been good enough to capture people's attention. But rather obviously, something inside Riot changed. Let's look at what happened pretty much the moment that it changed. January 2024, it saw layoffs of approximately 11% of Riot. That's 530 people. Riot Forge was ended. Legends of Runeterra lost staff and shifted to PvE as interest in PvP waned. October brought another round. It was smaller, but it was telling. It was 32 people from the League of Legends team itself. Then came the doubling down on expensive monetization-heavy trends for League of Legends. We've talked about those a fair bit in the last few years. It's often been the likes of gacha systems with, yes, a built-in pity, but a built-in pity that pretty much means you're going to be spending an absurd amount of money to get some of the hyper-expensive skins that they've put into that game. Of course, hyper-expensive skins that are fueled by FOMO. Then there's the monetization and loot box changes that had to be walked back so that players, still felt that they had a reason to engage with the game. It was crazy. And then by 2025, Hytale was cancelled and sold. Clearly then, the boom years were over, and the projects that remained had to pay the price. And normally when I'd say that, it would be, like a metaphor or something, but it's actually literal here. They needed to make money. They needed to pay for themselves, and fast. Hytale could not do that. At least not the version of Hytale that...
Well, Hytale could have done it. I don't believe that Hytale would have not been able to achieve that success. But to be fair, I believe that Hytale, by being the reborn and taken back into the hand of the original developers, not anymore into the juggernaut that Riot is, has benefited from this image and got more popular in this way than it would have if it was released by Riot. So I think this was a great benefit for them. I don't think that the cost was so unreasonable. Of course, they would have gone for the PlayStation version and everything else, but again, also that I don't know how much it would have been important at the beginning to launch on PlayStation and Xbox.
Riot would be, comfortable releasing. So that was killed. Then there's Riftbound, the card game, which by all accounts has actually worked out well. It seems highly in demand, stock is hard to come by, so that did succeed immediately. But then there's 2XKO. It had to pay for itself. That meant that it had to come out, and luckily, or unluckily for them, they were close enough to having a releasable product that they had to release it. Of course, it did not immediately work, and clearly Riot is not interested in slow growth. The line needs to go up. It needs to go up fast. And for game development teams, that means that they cannot hone their product market fit while their game is live. I mean, they can try to do that.
To be fair, I don't think that 2xKO would have been able to pay for this amount of people. I think it's a too niche of a product that is too focused on hardcore gamers rather than casual ones. So it would not attract many more people in the space, and you are competing with other juggernauts like Street Fighters and stuff like that. I don't think you can compete in any way with that.
The 2xKO team probably will try, but they've just lost half of their number. And is any potential player of that game going to look at it and think, I know what I'll do, I'm going to spend money in this game that they just laid off half the team of? No. Be it for good or ill, people do actually see their spending in games as a bit of an investment. People don't want to invest in a loser. And that, I think, has killed them. Killed might be too harsh. The remaining team are there, but they do just face an uphill battle. Not only do they have to pick up the pieces of the development plans that their colleagues were building and somehow deliver on them, because, they'll have made all of their plans with their team size into account. If you slash the team size, it's not like you can just yeet half the plans away and have something that works. No, you have to re-plan. That's going to hurt them. Delivering all that will be really hard, and as I said, they've now got to contend with the perception of the layoffs.
And to be fair, I'm more sorry for the people that was not laid off than for the people that was laid off. I have multiple times seen what happened when the companies get under stress, and the management never cut the plans. They just push everything on less people.
This game was already a tough pitch. It was peeling players off current and legacy fighting games. Those players have to believe that there's something worth investing their time into learning and their money into skins. That takes time. That's the real problem. Because whenever layoffs happen just 1 month into the full release life of a game, it sends a powerful signal that says, if you haven't started playing this, you actually made the right call. And you shouldn't bother. Now, I'm not dumb. I know there's a balance sheet. I know the balance sheet should probably look reasonable. But the thing here is, I think that this was just a little bit self-defeating. Because in managing their balance sheet, I think they have killed any near to medium term chance of this game experiencing meaningful growth. 2xKO is not dead, but from the outside, it sure doesn't look like it's going anywhere. What frustrates me is this didn't have to happen. Riot is not an indie developer who can't afford a few months of running at a loss. Now, they are entitled to cut their losses, sure, especially after 10 years of development and a studio acquisition. But to do so this fast? That's weird. And here's what makes it sting. The game is actually really good. The FGC loves it mechanically. Not all of them. I know it's not one monoblock of people called the fighting game community who all have the same opinions, but it seems genuinely praised in its mechanics. It hit third most downloaded free-to-play title on PlayStation at console launch. So this is not a bad game that failed. It's a good game that got abandoned because the growth curve was not steep enough. Here's the thing. You may remember a long time ago on this channel, we talked about a presentation done by Torolf Jernström. He was working in the mobile games niche. And this was years ago, but one of the core things was talking about the amount of time it takes from a player to become a payer. And in the games industry, that has only increased and increased over time. But the point basically is, if you launch on console and then kill your game a month later, even per the mobile game stats from that talk, most of your players were nowhere close to becoming a payer. You actually need to let things run. People will buy skins once they get attached to those characters, once they get attached to the game, once they have memorable wins that have came after months and months of getting better. That's when someone buys a skin. So to see a month of weak skin sales on PlayStation and pull the plug? Not even a month. I believe it was 3 weeks. That's stupid. That actually looks self-defeating. I'm kind of shocked. And the sad thing is, this is a really good game. And maybe it's just that Riot didn't have the patience to let that game get into its groove.
I mean, I think I will try the game. I want to try it as a free-to-play. I kind of like fighting games. I'm not good with combos and everything else, but I want to understand how it's going. And apparently, fighters game community like it. Unfortunately, usually when the fighter gaming community, the core audience like it, it means that the casual gamers will hate it. In the fighting game is a 101. Try to play Street Fighter Ranked now. You will be annihilated by everyone because the skill level is so high and the people left to play are are just the good ones, the ones that are playing it constantly, you are already too late entering it. I don't think it's a game that can really grow that much in time, a fighter game, if it doesn't have some way to really make the newbie comfortable with the game, to give them a way to play. But I have to try it and let you know.
And in doing this, the way that they've done it, they may have just shot it in both of its kneecaps. So yes, it's not dead, but when I say it isn't going anywhere, or it doesn't look like it's going anywhere, yeah, because it can't move anymore. Because Riot have hamstrung it. Because they've done the equivalent of seeing their struggling game lying on the floor and just put up a sign that says, "Plague, stay away." Bit of a weird metaphor, whatever, but I think it gets the point across. What the hell, man? Ugh, okay. That's it for this video, Killed in the Cradle. And speaking of Killed in the Cradle, there's something that I think a lot of people do want Killed in the Cradle. The shenanigans going on with Discord. You can learn about them here.
Okay, great video from Bellular. Very good one. And we will leave all the things running because it's his video, so we will let everything go. Last 2 cents. I think that the reason why all of this is happening is just because Riot do not really want this game, and projections are not good anymore because there has been a big change into the industry in what is considered to be viable and what is considered to not be viable. In general, I hope you enjoyed this video. If there is some content you would like to see me react to, feel free to suggest it or to propose one. Leave a like, subscribe, and see you in the next one. Bye.